Very good. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar entitled Mexico's Education Sector Today, International Education Market Updates, Trends, and Developments. My name is Colin Dewar, and I am the Director of External Relations at BCCIE, which is the BC Council for International Education, and I will be today's moderator. BCCIE is a provincial agency under the Ministry of Advanced Education, Skills, and Training, advancing the interests of international education throughout BC's education sector, including K-12, higher education, and the language sector. So thank you for joining us today in what promises to be an important presentation on one of BC's key international education partners, Mexico. Today's webinar is co-hosted by BCCIE, the Trade Commissioner Service, Global Affairs Canada. Before we get going, I had just a couple items to cycle through. First, we would like to acknowledge that BCCIE is on the unceded and traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We just have a housekeeping slide here as well. To control the control panel, if you're on a laptop, it's just on the right. You can click View on the menu and uncheck Auto Hide Control Panel to expose or to hide the control panel itself. Participation, we look forward to your participation in the questions box on the control panel, where we welcome your questions that you can pitch throughout the webinar, as well as your comments. And nearing the back part of the webinar, we'll have a chance to go through some of those questions. And if we don't get to them, we will invite you to send them directly to the Trade Commissioners post-webinar as well. If you have any technical questions during the webinar, please send those in the questions box, and we will do our best to address those as well. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guests, our panelists today. We have with us Laura Garza, Education Trade Commissioner and Academic Affairs Officer, Embassy of Canada in Mexico City. We have Veronica Soto, Education Trade Commissioner, Consulate of Canada in Guadalajara. Welcome, Vero. And we have Karen Serdan, Education Trade Commissioner, Consulate General of Canada in Monterrey. Thank you, Karen, and thank you all for being here today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass off the deck to our first presenter, and that will be Karen, that will go through the first few slides for today's presentation. So Karen.
Thank you very much, Colin, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Monterrey, Mexico. And now I will give you a very brief overview of the education sector in Mexico, and also focus on some trends, opportunities, and main threats that we have seen throughout the country. Perfect. As you might know, for many years now, Mexico has positioned itself as the second source of Latin American students in Canada. As per IRCC Open Info, since 2015, there has been an annual increase of 10% in the issuance of study permits for Mexican students. Also, in 2019, 8,710 study permits were issued to Mexican students, and 17,000 Mexican students took a language training program in Canada. On the other hand, Mexico's population is relatively young. 44% is under 24 years old. And it is also important to know that private institutions in Mexico, as Panamericana University, Tec de Monterrey, La Salle, are more expensive than international tuition costs at Canadian institutions. The tuition in those universities ranges between 16 and 23,000 Canadian dollars per year. Also, the middle class in Mexico, though still small by global standards, account for 47 of the country's total households at 14 million. And Mexico's middle class is expected to continue growing, with 4 million more households expected to move up to the middle range by 2030. As many of you will know, since 2009, no visa is required for Mexican citizens interested in studying in Canada less than 6 months. They only have to apply for an ETA. And at the end, air connectivity to Canada is very good. There are direct flights from Mexico City to Calgary, Montreal, Toronto, and Vancouver. Oh, perfect. And now, what are the main trends and opportunities that we as trade commissioners in Mexico see? First of all, Canada is recognized in Mexico as an excellent destination for student research. Mexican students are attracted to Canada's quality of life, to the work opportunities while studying, as well as the multiculturalism of the country and immigration opportunities after graduation. The political dynamics. Canada and Mexico also share a dynamic and prosperous relationship through the NAFTA being notified by Canada on April 2nd. This year, Canada and Mexico show that the mutual support will lead to a robust economic growth in both countries. Regarding the currency rate, despite the situation that we are currently facing with the pandemic, the exchange rate of Canadian dollar versus the Mexican peso has not changed significantly and is even cheaper than the US dollar or the euro. For example, currently 1 Canadian dollar is exchanged for 17 Mexican pesos and 1 US dollar for 24 Mexican pesos. So it's more cheaper than the US and the euro. Language skills, especially in English, continue to be of high importance for Mexican competitiveness. Only 11% of the population has sufficient skills in English to work or study. There is a very high demand for English as a second language. Actually, most of the opportunities that we as trade commissioners have found for our Canadian clients in the last years have been in English training. For example, Proyecta 10,000 program, Educafin scholarships, Government of Chihuahua scholarships, just to mention a few. And finally, the interest of Mexican educational institutions in finding partners to work together through COIL, collaborative online international learning, is increasing. And what are the main threats I would see as trade commissioners in Mexico? As you know, the new AMLO administration, the new administration in Mexico, that started in December 2018, is less inclined towards international education than past administrations. And now with the COVID-19 situation, we are expecting that the federal government will further reduce its interest in international education. Public universities and scholarship organizations that receive federal government funds will probably face budget cuts. The federal government could use that money in social programs and for supporting the Mexican population to face and recover from the pandemic. However, we will likely find some opportunities at subnational level with the government and ministers of education of the different states of the country. In addition to this, like all the countries around the world, Mexico's economic growth is loaded with uncertainty. It cannot be predicted exactly what will happen in the coming months, since each forecast has to assume like different variables. The temporary economic closure and slow recovery will cause significant effects on the Mexican family's economy. On the other hand, competitors as France, Australia, New Zealand, US have developed a strong promotion campaign in Mexico. Education USA, Campus France have been very active since the beginning of the pandemic in the country. And finally, Canada's weaknesses. Compared to other countries, Canada offers just one scholarship at federal level for Mexican students. The only scholarship available is the ELAB scholarship. And scholarship sponsored by Canadian universities is not common. The lack of reciprocity is also a very important factor in which the Mexican universities always flag that, as we saw in the last slide, close to 26,000 Mexican students per year go to Canada for a short and long-term program, but a very small number of Canadian students are coming for an academic experience in Mexico. So these are, in general, the trends, opportunities, and main threats that we see. Now I'm going to pass the microphone over to Laura, who is going to talk to you a little bit more about education and business during COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 trends and opportunities.
Thank you, Karen. So we thought that it was very important to give a brief overview about the education sector in Mexico during COVID-19. So as in many other countries, commercial flights have been reduced, even though Mexico's international borders remain open. This means that we haven't, at least Mexico on the federal level, imposed any, closures of the international borders. The Mexican economy has been greatly impacted. We just received the report of the first quarter, and we've already have negative results. We think that, the impact may go, from a recession of 6% all the way to 12%. It's still too early to know what would be the actual impact on the economy. Right now, Mexico is reaching the peak of the epidemic, according to government officials. Our confinement, at least at the federal level, is in place until May 30th. For the moment, this could change. We know that there's an upcoming announcement from the federal government this week to talk about the reactivation of, the Mexican economy in some municipalities, very small cities where there's not a lot of cases. But this announcement is coming hopefully tomorrow. But at least until now, May 30th is the official date until, confinement. Most of the Mexican higher education institutions repatriated their students, though we know there are still some some Mexican students in Canadian institutions. Karen did a small survey with Tec de Monterrey, and there's an approximate of 128 Mexican students still in Canada, if I recall correctly. I will let Karen correct me if I'm wrong. On the education sector, just as in every other country in the world, I believe the education sector in Mexico went online or virtually, though there's a vast lack of, technology and capacity in the public sector. So, for the public education sector, they did, Zoom and, every other thing and that they could think of, but we know that at least in the public sector, there's not a lot of, capacity regarding, Wi-Fi capacity or capabilities. Not every student has a laptop. They don't, teachers were not trained to face, online delivery. So we know that, there's still a problem there. Higher education institutions will finish their semesters online. And we know that they pushed their start dates all the way through August and September. They've canceled most of, their summer programs, and international mobility programs have been definitely canceled. Next slide, please. So also, we've been working with our Mexican partners, especially the ones that sponsor students for short-term programs to Canada. Some of our Canadian partners have proposed online delivery programs, like, for example, for Proyecta, but we haven't heard a response from most of them. Some of them have already declined because the rules of procedure of the funding are defined that the student needs to have that international face-to-face mobility. So some of them have already said no, and they're waiting until 2021 to start those. Regarding VACs, as in the whole Americas, VACs are still closed in Mexico. We still don't have, an opening date for this. And we know that, as in many other countries also, there's going to be a great impact, as I already mentioned, on family economy, public funds. So there's a lot of uncertainty about the future of international mobility. We already have some budget cuts in some of the partnership programs that go from 50 to 100%. Others, as we're saying, they're still kind of on hold, waiting to see what they can actually do next year, or see if the situation gets a little bit better later in the fall, but there's still so many things to think about. Regarding education agents, all of them are currently teleworking. We know there's going to be a hard impact on this sector. We know that a lot of Mexican agencies are worried they're probably going to be closed. And we're not only talking about, small agencies, but other like medium to large agencies that might not be able to get, or to survive the economic hit or the economic impact. So right now they're working on, their motto is postpone your study program, don't cancel it. They're also, offering or trying to offer loans or payment, how you could defer payments to start your program later on. So they're having a hard time. Next slide, please. So that's kind of like a small overview about the education sector. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about, trends and opportunities post-COVID. So digital promotion and creative, innovative models of digital recruitment are obviously enforced. Please keep engaging. As Karen was mentioning, we have, hard competition from, our main competitors. As the positive is that some sponsored student programs are going to be moved to January 2021. Think about funding options. Our market is going to become even more price sensitive. Think about scholarships, study loans, bursaries, anything that, you can think of that you can offer the students. We're also here to provide you for some ideas of what, Mexican institutions actually offer this. This is a great opportunity to, be strategic and create supportive partnership with education agents. Please remember that Mexico is a very agent-driven market, especially for K-12 language programs. Hybrid, blended, and new models of program delivery and international programs will be attractive to Mexican institutions. Vero will talk a little bit more about that. And, this is a great opportunity to create new or even strengthen current relations of collaboration with Mexican partners. So now I'm going to let Vero get a little bit in depth on this trends and opportunities of collaboration.
Thank you. We'll continue with this post-COVID trends and opportunities. And it is important that to know your institution to know what you're doing and how you're supporting the international students arriving, especially for those on the higher education over 6 months program who already have the study permit to travel to Canada. They know they need to self-isolate for at least for 14 days. So if your institutions are doing something to support them or alerting them and let them know that they need to follow this federal government rule. The collaboration online international learning COIL programs are becoming more and more popular. We started talking about these type of programs a few years ago. Some of the Mexican institutions who attended the BCCI's summer conference last June also mentioned that they're interested in collaborating through COIL programs. I think this is an opportunity to start rethinking and designing programs that can let you work more closely with your current partners or develop new partners. The virtual international mobility programs is also becoming attractive, and we're talking about virtual student exchange and faculty member exchange. Instead of the students going for a whole semester to Canada or coming for a summer program or a semester into Mexico, this can also be an option that their Mexican institutions are looking into, doing the virtual student or faculty member exchange. So think also about this, and this. I think everybody is redesigning, and this is a way to start proposing new things to work. As Laura mentioned, in Mexico, the price, Mexican institutions are very price sensitive. So when you are proposing programs to your partners or selling to a government agency, think about the pricing. Online training is not something that Mexican students will pursue because they like to have that international experience by traveling to Canada. Nevertheless, there are some students who require to have a specific level of English or programs in order to start postgraduate or a higher education degree. That's why they need to do this online, perhaps ESL training, and they will be willing to do it online, not in presence. So those programs may work, but it's not a very popular practice if it's gonna cost the same to as this is in present or online. So we recommend that look into your proposals. This may not be very attractive, especially for those agencies that sponsor students. Also, use your current partnership and extend your network to move into a virtual collaboration. We have been working more and more through BCCIE to promote that collaboration between Mexican and BC institutions. So we can also help to develop more partnership. And of course, use your trade commission and network in Mexico. We can help you find the right institution for you. The next slide, please. There, I'm going to start. So BCCIE has presence in Mexico. I think, yeah, there. Thank you. So I wanted to show this slide because it's important to know how the important work that BCCIE is doing in Mexico and engaging these institutions in the country. And these are only a few examples of the partnership that they started to sign since 2016 when they came. The first one was with the Jalisco Consortium of Higher Education, where you find 6 of the top private and public universities in Mexico, including Tec de Monterrey, Universidad of Guadalajara, the second largest university in Mexico, public university, UNIVA, ITESO, Universidad Autónoma de Guadalajara, UP, Universidad Panamericana, and the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology. They recently met in October, and there have been some presence of these institutions and organizations during the BCCIE conference. They're very interested in continue engaging with these institutions. CUMEX is a consortium of public universities, state universities. As you know, in Mexico, the higher education system is composed by public and private universities. So CUMEX is pretty much all the big public universities in each one of the states belong to this consortium. AMPEI is, they recently had a conversation also with AMPEI. They signed last year, and they are composed from public and private universities. And Educafin, that's the most recent MOU they signed last November. Educafin is the Guanajuato government agency that provides student loans and scholarship for international mobility. And they have some agreements with language institutions to provide a student loan for ESL training. So they're partners also with Caldo, Languages Canada, MyTax, and some other education key stakeholders from Canada. And last is some of the agreements that, because of the presence of Mexican institutions in BCCIE Summer Conference, have been signed with Western Mexico institutions like Universidad of Guanajuato, with Capilano University last October, UNIVA and KPU last December, and the Jalisco Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology with Languages Canada, thanks to the presence of them in the summer conference, and BCCIE and Educafin. So I think you have a very good network of partnership that BCCIE has developed to help you connect with Mexican institutions and create these new linkages, virtual collaboration. Next one, please. Well, in the next slide, you will be seeing our contact information. We are the Education Trade Commissioner Network in Mexico. We between the three of us, we try to cover the whole territory. Mexico is very, very vast and very big. Karen Serdan covers North Mexico. She's based in Monterrey. Laura Garza, she's based at the Embassy in Mexico City. She pretty much oversees the whole territory. And from Guadalajara, I cover Western, Bajío, and Center states, 6 states in Pacific area of Mexico. So we're here to help you maintain the presence and to connect you with new partners. Thank you very much. And I think we're opening the floor for questions.
Yes, that is correct. Thank you very much, Vero and Karen and Laura, for your presentation. So the floor is now open for questions to the panelists, to the trade commissioners. So we invite you to submit those now. There's a number that have come in. So I will start things off, and maybe with Vero. If I can start with you, Vero. We've had a question coming in, understanding that the EduCanada has planned a number of virtual events this fall, and the questioner would like to know if there's any other virtual events planned, either for later in the fall or possibly spring. Any other activities that the embassy or EduCanada might be doing in Mexico or throughout states in Mexico?
So we have our first EduCanada virtual fair coming in 2 days, and we are assessing for the EduCanada fair in the fall if it's gonna take place virtually or in presence. We don't know yet. We are analyzing all the situation, and we will be able to tell our Canadian clients how it's gonna happen. We usually have 2 EduCanada fair per year, one during the fall and the one in winter, usually end of February. Right now, we are on the go for the fall EduCanada fair. There are proposed dates. The dates are already in the SPC webpage, but we still need to wait until we get more assessment of how the pandemic goes. And perhaps Laura can mention a little bit more about the EduCanada fair and if she knows about other providers of virtual fairs.
Thank you, Vero. Yes, well, as Vero mentioned, we are evaluating how are we gonna do the EduCanada fairs that were planned for October. We will let you guys know once we have a little bit more information about how these events are gonna be done. We are also working with our partners, thinking about, other webinars. We're talking to our Mexican partners to see if we can do like thematic webinars. We're working in the embassy to coordinate a social media campaign focused on the education sector. So we're thinking about new ways, innovative ways in which we can keep the education brand and the Canadian presence alive. We need to be very innovative and think creatively of how we attract the different audiences that we can reach out virtually. We have our higher education institution partners, we have, the education agents, we have, the regular students that we want to recruit. So, if you have any other, ideas, or if there's material, webinars, free online courses that your institutions are offering, please let us know. And as we were saying, we're thinking about future events that we can, coordinate. We were thinking about an internationalization event prior the Anuyes conference later this year. So right now we're kind of like everyone else in sort of planning mode. We're reaching out to our partners and we're trying to develop activities for, at least the fall semester, because basically the conferences that we had, we were going to participate, face to face, we were going to travel, but everything has changed now. So, again, we're here. If you have any ideas or material that, we can think about how we can promote, we are totally open to that.
Excellent.
And I just would like to add that some top-ranked high schools here in the north, for example, the American School Foundation of Monterrey or French-Mexican High School, they are currently planning their international virtual fairs. So if some of you are interested in participating in this kind of virtual fair being developed by the private high schools, in the north of Mexico. I'm pretty sure that maybe also in the center or in the south of the country, some private high schools may be interested in organizing this kind of fair. So please let us know, and we for sure can contact you with the right person to participate in this kind of events.
Excellent. Thank you. On to the next question. This is referring to recognition of equivalency for high school credits. So the question is the Mexican Ministry of Schools able to validate grant equivalency for high school credits to Mexican students enrolled in high school credit courses from BC and Ontario school board? So maybe I'll just start with Vero on this, but if you want to punt it to anybody else, that would be fine too, if you have an answer.
The accreditation from the high school level, it has happened and is valid if the student did a semester or a full year in a BC institution. The Mexican school will have to validate that semester and credit the semester or the school year if the student took the subjects that are mandatory by the Mexican Ministry of Education. We haven't heard of any situation where they say, no, we cannot accredit unless they take cooking classes or filming or theater. So they need to follow the subjects that the Federal Ministry of Education requires in order to do those credits in the Mexican school. Laura, you may have some other information talking to your contact in the Federal Ministry of Education.
Yes, as Vero was saying, she's totally correct. We do have, and maybe we can share a calling with you later on, the link where, there's the information about what's the process to validate studies from abroad. When we're talking about undergrad, it's even more easy than when we're talking about, higher education, university, or, a master's degree, or, so on. But when we're talking about high school, K to 12, it's pretty easy. And as Vero was saying, it's a kind of like a job between, the school that the kid is attending, so they can validate with the Mexican school here. And then, if they do like full studies, they need to revalidate it with the Ministry of Public Education. And I can send you the link with all the information. But as Vero was mentioning, it's pretty straightforward. It's not very complicated, and the parent, can do it easily. It's not very. They facilitated the process a few years ago, so we can send you the link with the whole information about the complete process, because this is obviously something that the parent/student needs to do on their own.
Excellent, thank you. And just a reminder to our attendees today, for the questions, again, we don't get to, you're encouraged to send your questions directly to the trade commissioners, any of the trade commissioners. And again, we are sharing this recording and slide deck post-webinar, so you have all that information and contact information for our trade commissioners from Mexico. The next question I have is two questions. I'll just collapse it into the visa question. If there's any updates for student visa processing for fall 2020, including how biometrics are being handled, and kind of part two of that, the average processing time for visas, if you are able to respond to that. Thank you. I'll start with Laura on this. Thank you.
Thank you. No, we still unfortunately don't have updates. The VACs are still closed. We know that IRCC is working on this. They're already starting to work and planning on how they're gonna start again their operations. This is something, and it's a concern that we've also shared with IRCC, that we have from you, our clients, and obviously a question that's being raised with our agents here in Mexico. So we know how important it is. We still don't have a date. As soon as we have a date of when the VAC is opened, we'll let you know. We do think that there's going to be, long waiting times for, getting an appointment for the vax, especially because we don't know, how many people they're actually going to let into the vax, how many people are going to work there. We need to think about social distancing and all this. But until now, we don't have a date for starting yet. As soon as we get one, we'll let you guys know. We're working with IRCC. We've already raised this question because we know how important it is for you. But until now, students need to take their biometrics to complete the process of their student permit. But unfortunately, right now, vax are closed, not only in Mexico, but, in the whole America. So hopefully we'll get more information soon. And, as soon as we get anything, we'll share that information with you guys.
And they can start the process online, and the biometrics, which is in person, they need to wait. But they can start, if they require a study permit and they already have a letter of acceptance, the student can start the process online. So that's what we been told from our colleagues from the IRCC, but they need to wait until they get their appointment for the biometrics.
Excellent. Thank you. This is for Karen. I'll start with you. Is there any update, or do you anticipate Proyecta to resume at a later date?
Proyecta, I will pass the microphone to Lara, who is working in Mexico City, so maybe I know that she have more information about this.
Thank you, Karen. No information for Proyecta. We shared an email with most of the institutions a couple of weeks ago. I talked with Hector again. They're not working right now. The Proyecta program is considered non-essential activity, so non-essential activities are not being taking place right now in the state of Mexico. They're supposed to come back after May 30th, and we'll probably get an answer. I think that the best way to go would be to plan this program, by providing an online delivery or proposals, because if the students are required to do quarantine, as you all know, Proyecta is a 4-week program. So if the student needs to stay 2 weeks inside quarantine, then, just having an ESL program for 2 weeks, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But, we'll have to wait and see. Hector did not want to say, if the program, it's still on standby. The funds are still there. They haven't used the funds. So that's, the positive side of it. But we still need to wait until June. Definitely the program will not take place during the summer. If it does take place, presence, face-to-face, or if the students are able to travel, the program would need to be changed, and it would need to take place during the fall. But, it's still on standby. So we need to wait a little bit more, a few weeks, so we can, again, get in touch with them and get an answer on that. But the funds are there, so that's the positive side of it.
Great. Good, thank you. This next question is for Vero. It's about the K-12 sector. Are Mexican parents thinking of sending their kids to study abroad? What are the trends right now in Mexico pertaining to study abroad for K-12 age students? Any updates around this? I'll start with Vero. Thanks.
Well, the Mexican economy has been has been hit greatly due to the COVID, and this will impact in the family economy as well. So there are many families who have their own small business, and because of that success, they have been able to send their kids to Canada. Some others have saved to send their kids to Canada on junior high school or high school semester or a full year. And we need to wait to see how all this is going to evolve and how the economy is going to start recovering. I think international mobility for these students into junior high school or high school is going to slow down, and especially because they cannot assure how safety their kids will be in Canada, right? They they need to arrive to Canada, self-isolate, they're underage, where they're going to be self-isolating themselves. If the school district will help on that, I think all that they need to really, through the education agent or directly the contact through the school district or private institution in Canada, they need to talk to the parents and provide that confidence. But we really need to see how the economy will recuperate, because it's going to be a big hit in everybody's family pocket and family economy.
Excellent.
As Vera said, it's very difficult to predict what is going to happen. I can say that with the local contacts that I have talked, they have said, for example, in some universities, as Tec de Monterrey, and 90% of the students continue interested in having international experience for the next year or for this fall. But I can tell you that, for example, other private universities say from 50 students, only 15 continue interested in taking a program for the fall or for the next year. So it varies a lot, and it changes a lot as the pandemic changes in Mexico. And also the salary of the families, for example, some parents are receiving only 50% of the salary, only 70% of their salary. So all their economy is being really, really affected. So as Vera said, it's very, very difficult to predict right now what is going to happen. The industrial sector, all the automotive sector, the aerospace sector, that is very strong, not only in the north of Mexico, also in the entire country. In the news, they say that it's about to open in the next 2 weeks. So maybe we can restart the economy, but let's see what happened during the next weeks.
Good, thank you. Next question is about the impact of COVID-19, and has it shaped or prioritized certain courses that Mexican students might be now more interested in, or courses that they might be less interested in during this time, and of course, due to the impact of COVID-19. So I think this is primarily in higher education. Maybe I can start with Karen on this.
In which they can be more interested. As we said in our presentation, ESL Programs is the top one for Mexicans. So ESL programs can be from their interest, and also French training can be one of them. But it's very difficult also to know the exact subject or the exact student they want to pursue because of the situation. But I think that it will remain the same that in the past, the same programs, even though I don't know if Laura has some other comment for it.
Yes, so I think there's going to be a lot of interest also in, anything that has to do obviously with technology. We don't know how much time, this social distance is going to be, going on. So obviously, engineering, a lot of programs that can, give you skills to work, from home, anything that's IT, technology, it's called TIC in Spanish. It's technology, information, and communication. So those areas were also of, very attractive to Mexican students. And I think also, still think about, the ability to, work after you graduate in Canada. All these immigration stuff, it's still going to be of interest. But, regarding online training or online delivery, I think, anything on engineering, video games, digital design, all these sorts of things are going to be of great interest for the Mexican audience. And I think I will let Vero complement on the, areas, for example, that are very popular, for the industry in her area.
Thank you. Yes, I totally agree with Laura. The creative industries in Jalisco are becoming more and more important, and they're supported by the state government. So developing these new skills and find partners to develop programs in Canada, that's key. So universities are very eager to learn from Canadian innovation experience and what developments you have done from their labs. But also, I think in this isolation, continue developing those intercultural skills and to provide that international experience virtually to a student will be also important. And this can work both ways. Canadian students don't travel a lot, but this can be a good start and a soft way to start a soft mobility for Canadian students. There are some Mexican universities who are offering Spanish and cultural experience. For example, Universidad of Guanajuato offered this during the summer. They mentioned they're not going to do it online, but they are exploring the possibility to do it online and offer it to their partners. So this is a good way to do that international learning virtually, and then prepare for when we're able to travel and go out. Sharing best practices between classrooms and students and faculty members, I think this is also going to be an area of opportunity. If you're working in an area that you would like to develop or explore partnership with a Mexican classroom or faculty member, I think that can also be a good practice of collaboration both ways. What are you doing? How are you doing it? Do you have a lab? Mexican universities, especially the public ones, they're the ones who conduct a lot of research, but they don't have necessarily all the equipment in their laboratories as Canadian institutions. So I think sharing all that can also be, and virtually use all this technology, that can also be very good.
Thank you. The next question is related to the appeal of online learning for Mexican students. As the panelists know, many institutions in Canada have transitioned into online learning. Some of them will continue with online learning in the fall as well. The question is, has there been done any, is there any research that has been done or asking Mexican students their perception of online learning, and if they are planning to continue in the fall if there is online learning, or would they prefer to defer their studies to a following semester? I can start with Laura on this. Thank you.
Thank you. So yes, there's starting to be a couple of studies on online learning. As you know, Mexico was a market where Mexicans didn't see a lot of value on online learning. So if you were thinking about doing a master's degree, the Mexican market was barely getting used to the idea of doing, for example, a master's degree from, I don't know, a private institution like, I don't know, Tec de Monterrey or Ibero or whatever, online. If you could do it face-to-face, it was preferable. So right now, I think that the positive side of this is that we are able now to, give value to online learning. So a lot of people are, making the same questions. Even Mexicans are making the same questions right now to themselves. And we think that even Mexican higher education institutions are going to be promoting more and more the online learning ways. So we do believe that this is going to be of interest for Mexican students. For us, the important part for our Canadian partners is going to be, how do we highlight the value added that this online delivery has, like this Canadian partner has versus a local institution? So how is my master's or my diploma or my certificate or my whatever, what's the value added? What am I offering that, it's a plus? So, the Mexican student knows what they're getting from, this online delivery from X Canadian client. So I think that's going to be, that's the part that we really need to, highlight. The positive thing is that, as we were saying, there's a lot of public institutions in Mexico that don't have, they didn't have the capacity to deliver online programming. And I do believe that there are many Canadian institutions that have this experience and have, the tools. And as Vero was saying, blended learning, collaboration, that way is a good way where you can, brand yourself. Students will have, some sort of experience with your institution through online delivery. So, going back to the answer, yes, there's an interest. No, the Mexican market is not used to it. This is something completely new, but this is something that we believe that's going to become more and more interesting, and it's going to be pushed positively also by, Mexican higher education institutions. And I know that they're private institutions in Mexico, they've done it and they have experience and they offer already a lot of programs on this, but I do see an opportunity for Canadian institutions.
I would like to add a little bit to that. The institutions, the higher education institutions are planned to go back in September to present classes. They need to assess if they will be able to do international mobility in the fall. Actually, as Laura said, next week is crucial. Tec de Monterrey will decide if they're going to do their international mobility in the fall, and many other institutions are saying that. But for classes in present, they're starting in September. Online education is a challenge for certain areas of studies, like design, where they need a laboratory or they need a workshop, and they need to practice the 3D machine or things like that. So they can continue online, but they're facing some the experience of working in a lab or in a workshop. So we haven't heard that local institutions are moving into the 21 semester. They're starting everything, they say that, in September, presential classes. So we'll need to wait and see.
And I can say that that also is very important. That's why it's very important for you to have a very good communication with your partners in Mexico right now, because I have heard from many local contacts that I asked them, have you received any email from that partner? And they say, no, I haven't received any information. Have you received this from the partner that you signed this MOU the last year? No, I haven't heard anything. So it's very important for you to have a very good communication with your partners, because it's the way that you can have info on the students' needs, but also on the competitors. Why, or for example, what Tec de Monterrey is looking for, what Ibero is looking for, what that technological university or institute that you are partnered with is looking for. Maybe a competitor already went with them and they are already developing a virtual plan for the students. So it's very important for you to be in contact with them and let them know that you can create programs based on their needs.
Great, thank you very much. Just a note on maintaining partnerships. That's one of the roles of the Council of BCCIE. So again, we appreciate the work of the trade commissioners in helping maintain those relationships and sustain them during this time as well. I think, as Karen said, it's very important to do that and encourage our listeners to continue to do that and identify platforms to move that relationship forward and to maintain and sustain it. Our next question is just related to your knowledge if any Canadian post-secondary institutions are now maybe increasingly reaching out to Mexican universities to establish dual degree programs using online curriculum. If you're aware of any discussions there or any thoughts there, I'll start with Vero.
Sorry, I lost my microphone. So dual degree programs are very well accepted in Mexico institutions, but not especially for private universities. Public universities is going to be difficult for the student to pay the tuition fee of a Canadian university to get those 2 years as a dual degree program. As many of you may know, that public universities in Mexico are pretty much free. They don't cost a lot, or they don't cost anything. So it's going to be very challenging for a student from a public university to be able to do 2 years in Mexico and then 2 years paying the Canadian tuition, the international tuition fee in a Canadian institution. So to develop dual degree programs with a regular international tuition in a Canadian institution, will have to go into private universities. They have a better chance exploring that. And we know that there are some private universities like Universidad Panamericana, or even Tec de Monterrey, or ITESO, which is the sister of Ibero. They may be able to explore that opportunity, and especially in a program that is unique for Canada, and the Mexican institution doesn't have, that they can add on into a different type of program that they're not offering, and offer that added value to their students.
Excellent. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. This is a question about just study abroad. If you have any advice for BC institutions or Canadian institutions that either have study abroad, did have study abroad, or would like to continue with study abroad in the future, either at K through 12 or in, more so probably in higher education. During this time, what should the institutions be aware of? What might they need to prepare? Of course, with deference to any travel restrictions, et cetera, but what advice would you give to institutions to ensure they can maintain and sustain those relationships to offer BC students to study in Mexico? I'll start with Karen.
Thank you, Colin. Well, Vancouver is one of the top destinations for high school, for K to 12, for Mexican students. And I think that you can continue, as I said before, having a very good communication with your partners, and also developing virtual strategies for the programs that you want to offer. Right now, all the students are looking at those, for example, virtual open houses, for example, or webinars, or participating in Educana virtual fairs, or I said before, in the international fairs at private high schools. So all these events that in which you can participate, I think it's a good way to continue in contact with your audience. I don't know if Veronica or Laura have any other idea or information for sharing with the audience.
Sorry, if I can just step in, we're almost out of time, so I think what I'll do, I will close our webinar session now, just with a couple reminders or notes to share with you. There is a link in the chat box for everybody to click on and complete the survey for this webinar, which we would highly appreciate your feedback, so we can continue to improve this offering as well. So we appreciate that. As I mentioned earlier, all the trade commissioners would be very willing and happy to receive your questions directly, especially the ones that we didn't get to today, or if you have other questions, that's part of their service and role, and they'd be delighted to receive your questions. Again, in the slide deck that we'll be sharing post-webinar will be posted on our website. All their contact information is there as well. So if I can offer my thanks to all the trade commissioners to be able to join us today, it's highly appreciated. We absolutely value your work. From our point of view, from the council's point of view, it's been exceptional. So thank you again for that. And we do look forward to working with you in the future, and eventually seeing you again in person, either here or in Mexico. So thank you very much again, and we appreciate your time today. So we'll close it there. I invite you to say any closing goodbyes, and then we'll close it up. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the invitation, BCCIE colleagues, for organizing, and all the team. Think about solidarity. I think this is the time for solidarity, and be in touch with your partners. That's very, very important. And thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, thank you again, and take care of each other. Bye-bye.